This is a movie that you are either going to be depressed by or you are going to be irritated by. And you're going to hope that it ends quickly. I'm Micah, a licensed therapist, and here we like to talk about horror and disturbing stuff. This one's not technically horror, but if you're a regular, you know my definition of horror is quite broad. This one falls into the category of horror that is real life. So we're going to get artsy fartsy.
Shut up. I don't like it because it's so artsy fartsy.
Julien Donkey Boy, another brainchild of Harmony Korine. This one came after Gummo. It's time to revisit this chaotic filmmaking style focused on individuals on the fringe of society. This movie is grainy as hell. I could see why someone would give up quickly, unless they were determined to watch it or into really weird shit. I was both. Harmony wanted to show the reality of schizophrenia through this film, which he did, sort of. Besides the murder, we'll return to that. Julien is the main character, but this film examines the entire family. I appreciate this because the family system is important when considering what's going on with the individual who's a part of the family. Julien is a young man with schizophrenia. It's severe, untreated, and most likely undiagnosed. His family accepts him, but they also just ignore the issues. The dysfunction is palpable. First, schizophrenia, we've all heard of it, and I think the common public perceives it as peak mental illness. It's incredibly debilitating. And I believe that this movie may be difficult to watch for people who know and love someone who struggles with this disorder. It's a fairly accurate depiction for someone who's completely untreated. Schizophrenia primarily emerges in men in their late teens, early 20s, which is about Julien's age range. So schizophrenia is characterized by a number of symptoms. Biggest one most are aware of is the hallucinations. Auditory, visual, and tactile hallucinations are often a part of the experience of psychosis, which is a feature of schizophrenia. Psychosis refers to a detachment from reality, not so much in a dissociative way, more in your perception is starkly different than that of the greater majority. Julien presented with the characteristic disorganized thinking and speech.
Morning chaos, eternity chaos, noon chaos, eternity chaos, evening chaos, eternity chaos, midnight chaos, eternity chaos, morning chaos, eternity chaos, noon chaos, evening chaos, eternity chaos.
You can understand what he's saying, the words, but not always the message that's being delivered. And watching Julien's behavior feels similar to what it's like when you're sitting with someone who's in active psychosis. It's pretty unnerving when you're not used to it. Some of Julien's hallucinations are, he has some hallucinations of talking to Hitler, and he is playing with a gun and stuff. There's a lot of really weird, uncomfortable scenes. It's very disjointed. I think that Julien Donkey Boy, in contrast to Gummo, follows more of a specific narrative, but it's also kind of pieced together in a collage format. Harmony actually based this character on his uncle who had schizophrenia. He thought that depictions of schizophrenia were romanticized, and he wanted to avoid that in this depiction. I personally wouldn't call depictions of schizophrenia in media romanticized. I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong. It's at least not romanticized in horror. I would call it more exploitative, and I think it's just lazy storytelling. It's real easy to use somebody who hallucinates things to be the scary part of a horror movie. And as I've said before, do better. So Harmony actually spent some time filming his uncle who was in an institution to help the actor be able to portray schizophrenia in the most accurate way possible. Don't know how I feel about this, but it's not my uncle. As always, I have a problem with some of this. In the opening scene, Julien kills a child when he is denied a turtle. I mean, turtles are pretty awesome, so I get his rage, but not cool Julien. Julien quickly recognizes his error and feels remorse, but it's too late. I'm gonna get up on my soapbox for a sec. I don't like this scene because sometimes when someone has a mental health disorder, this disorder is blamed for their actions. Don't get me wrong, it's a factor, it contributes to behavior, but if someone decides to kill someone else, I would say 90-something% of the time, they made an active choice to do so. Most of the time they know the consequences and their mental health does not excuse it. I feel like Julien did not register the consequences of his actions in this, so I get what they were going for. I just feel like it could have been totally left out. And while it can be unsettling and you can feel unsafe if you're not used to these behaviors, someone with schizophrenia is not inherently dangerous. It's not a feature of the disorder. Could some experiences increase the odds of violent behavior? Sure. Will it? Statistically Artistically, not so much. On with the rest of the movie, which is kind of how the movie treats this scene. Doesn't come up again. There's two ways I can interpret the crap visual quality of this movie. It does speak to the fragmented mental experience of Julian. I think it's unclear and disorganized, just like Julian's mind. Also, this movie was just supposed to be a big F you to the mainstream media. I respect that. Let's look at Julian's family. His dad is intense and abusive, but is likely also stuck in complicated grief associated with the death of the children's mother. He likes to talk about war and sit around in a gas mask. Totally normal. Dad and his armless friend have a conversation about adaptability when you are born different. And this is in contrast to Julian, who struggles to adapt. He's unpredictable, and that causes issues. He really needed treatment, including medication. Julian's brother Chris seems to catch the brunt of his dad's crappy behavior. And Chris also wants to be a wrestler. The movie shows him obsessively training, and sometimes wrestling a trash can. Alright. He seems to be depressed and is struggling with feelings of inferiority. Of course, his dad's a big factor in that, in my opinion. At one point, his dad offers Chris money to wear his mother's dress and dance with him. Dad states that this is because he looks most like her. Chris doesn't go for this, but we probably know that humiliation was probably something that Dad was going for. Oh, and there's the whole water hose scene.
Come on, keep still. Don't shift around. Come on, be a man. Be a man and quit that moody brooding. Quit that.
So cold!
Come over here.
One thing about Chris, we learned that the mother died either during or shortly after childbirth and having Chris, the youngest. Makes me wonder if Dad's kind of holding that against Chris. Julian's sister Pearl is pregnant. It's heavily implied that Julian might be the father. I think it's not totally clear if this is the case, because one could argue that she's simply trying to give Julian a sense of purpose. She seems to have stepped into the role of trying to care for Julian and make sure he's okay after the death of their mother. Now, the reason why I question if Julian is actually the father of his sister's baby is because there is a scene where his sister role plays their mother on the phone, which is why I think like maybe Pearl is just trying to take care of Julian and again give him a sense of purpose. But I don't know. In this scene where Pearl is talking to Julian as their mother, it becomes clear that Julian may not totally understand death. He may have a very developmentally delayed interpretation of that. It could be as a result of the rampant, untreated psychosis that he's experiencing, or he could have some other developmental delays. During this conversation, Pearl explains to Julian that the voices don't want to hurt him. She's trying to comfort him, and she's also trying to encourage him to practice good dental hygiene, which is extra important because he likes to wear little clip-on fake teeth and dips them in juice to clean them. Also, Grandma is there sort of, but she's mostly just there and obsessed with Punky the dog. I can't really blame her given the situation. There are multiple scenes where we see that Julian hangs out with other disabled people, primarily blind individuals. These scenes of them hanging out, bowling, watching a magic show, etc. are uncomfortable and awkward, which is likely the experience of someone who's suffering as much as Julian.
Yeah, I'm a black albino straight from Alabama, way down south, then you know that I'm a black albino straight from Alabama, way down south, then you know that I'm a black albino straight from Alabama.
Julian's behavior is off-putting and a lot of people avoid him. But it seems like these people are more accepting of him and his behavior. Probably because they know what it's like to be rejected. As we reach the end of the movie, we see Julian's very pregnant sister going ice skating. Of course, this isn't going to go well. Prior segments indicate that this may have been a missed dream for Pearl, because, you know, now she's pregnant. Can't ice skate, tries anyway. So, as you can anticipate, she falls directly on her stomach. It's a very dramatic scene. She's screaming. Julian runs out to her to try to help her. She is then rushed to the hospital where the baby is delivered, either stillborn or dying shortly after birth. It's not clear, but the baby does die. Julian is wildly distraught. So he tracks down the nurse who's carrying the baby to another room, tells the nurse it's his baby because, okay, it could be. He then steals the corpse of the infant from the hospital, and we watch for what feels like forever as he makes his way home. It's sad. It's uncomfortable. The movie ends with him crawling into bed, extremely distressed, clutching the infant, rocking back and forth, seemingly hoping and praying for something different. It's a little fucked, but not surprising given Harmony's MO. If you know, you know. So I get that there's a lot of symbolism in this movie. movie, and I've read about a lot of speculation regarding the symbolism. I can appreciate that. I'm not really looking at it as much. I didn't like this movie. I doubt I'll ever watch it again. I didn't like Gummo, but felt drawn to keep watching it to try to understand. The vibe was enticing. Not in this one. This felt like one of the longest movies of my life. Did Harmony reach his goal though? Yeah, I think so. What are your thoughts on Julien Donkey Boy?